until they get shorter. So. Shabbat Shalom. If you're watching at home, we want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom as well, and thank you for joining us. I know that the members of the Cayden tune in every week, and so of course we want to welcome them. And anyone else who is watching, if this is your first time clicking to us, this is Beth-El congregation in Fort Worth. If you're a visitor here for the first time, and I've already met a number of visitors here for the first time, we're really glad to have you here. Before we continue with our service, first, my name is Rabbi Brian Zimmerman. Should not presume you know that. And secondly, I'd like to ask you to do a little bit of Jewish stretching, which means turning your head about 90 degrees if you can do it, and wishing people near you Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I want to, of course, as always, thank John Salve for all of his help in preparing all of our services and musical director of our congregation. We'll share a little more about Mamir and Kurt Thompson a little later, but we are honored to have him with us for another year. It's the 26th year but I'm not sure, it's unclear what year it is of Beth-El, but we are honored to have you with us for another Shabbat, and more about that. And for all of our guests who are with us, thank you also for being here this Shabbat, and of course also to welcome Carl on the Bima, I think for the first time in a long time. One of our streamers, Carl Rosenblum, but today he's on the Bima, and it's great to have him. And Robert Simon, our president, who is with us here this Shabbat. It's wonderful to have you here. And I just want to point out before we continue also, Cayden and Chloe Koon, who had their bat mitzvah like a year ago, 10 months, right? Last summer, and said they'd be happy to continue leading sometimes when they're free on Friday nights. And a number of people make that offer, but only a smaller number mean it. So they said, yes, we will do it. They did a wonderful job at their bat mitzvah, and they'll do a wonderful job tonight inviting us to join them in worship. So as we prepare to continue with our Shabbat service, take a moment, whatever your week has been, whether your week has been a celebration of highs, or whether your week has been some moments that were slightly more challenging than you've climbed that hill, and you are here at Shabbat, and you've made it. One of the nice things about summer in our chapel is our chapel. Not only the intimacy of our chapel, but the beautiful, beautiful garden that is a reminder of Shabbat's past and present, and we hope future. The garden that contains much of what was important from our last sanctuary worship place that also is incorporated into our new building. And so that's part of Shabbat. So take a moment for Shabbat. Take a deep breath. Shabbat is, it's just a time to regroup, to reground. And nowhere is that more noticeable than in the Kabbalat Shabbat service, which for the most part is a function of the 15 and 1600s in northern Israel, while many different Jews gathered in that area, including Sfat. The largest group was already an existing city, it had already been built as a fort. But for the majority of the newcomers to Sfat, they were people who had relocated because of the Spanish expulsion, because of 1492, and found their way to Israel. And a good number of them became mystics, and those mystics also found their way to northern Israel. And it was there in that fertile land where they started to reconceive of Shabbat in a whole new way. They thought of Shabbat as the concrete realization of the people Israel and God joining together once again. And they created a service, Kabbalat Shabbat, the welcoming of Shabbat, in which the different forces of the universe would come together, much in the way that a bride and a groom would come together. If you reflect on relationships, you know that there are days, not tonight's couple, but all other couples. We know there are days when they are the apple of your eye. And there are days when you need those moments to go, I am reuniting in a sense. I am recommitting. And so for the rabbis of Sfat, Kabbalat Shabbat was the chance to say after an entire week of being separate from God through all trivial matters, they would literally rededicate themselves, remarry, reaffirm their vows to God. And should you wish to look at more of them in detail, you will discover that Kabbalat Shabbat is about the reuniting of the bride and the groom, of the Jewish people and God, and on a mystical level of the universe, coming together perhaps out of days and days of not noticing, of not being aware. This whole service is full of that. And so before we continue on page 129, we look to Do Di Li, these words from Song of Songs. Do Di Li, Vani, Lo, Aroe, Basho, Shani, Do Di Li, Now, if you're wondering why is Rabbi getting all mystical on us tonight, it's because I'm going to call up Dr. Bruce and Hollis Weiner in a moment to light our Shabbat candles. And as you know, at certain times during the year, couples celebrating anniversaries choose to mark that here, of which I am personally so very, very grateful. And tonight we thought we would make that a blessing, a part of Kabbalat Shabbat, because unions reaffirmed are the mystical idea of which the mystics taught. And so we light Shabbat candles. You can find the blessing for lighting Shabbat candles on page 120, and then a word or two about reaffirming this marriage of 55 years.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu v'hadaber shel Shabbat.
Yeah, it's out now. We'll grab, there we go, thank you. It's always a little bit of excitement. And you know what? You need that as part of the 55th, right? Right. So I just want to say a word or two, not a sermon, a word or two before we go to the Ark, and then before we turn to Lecha Dodi. So if you haven't figured out the theme of this part of the service yet, it'll hit you over the head. When the Jewish people and God reaffirm and reconnect. And Hollis and Bruce come here after 55 years. They've been coming here a lot of those years, but they come here tonight when they could have been a lot of other places. And Bruce was kind enough to say in the nicest way, don't worry, it wasn't because of you. In the nicest way. He said, we didn't come to hear your sermon, which we're friends, so he could say that. But they came here in this place that means a great, great deal to them. Bruce has been a past president who has been on many, many committees. Hollis, who has done the same, but the one that we most want to point out is her archive work over the decades for this congregation. If you see something really clever that is emerging of past, present, and future, chances are the idea came from Hollis. And so you can see it. You can see it in the walls outside that look to the future and the setting sun, but also have plaques, statements from and sconces from the last building. They come together in that memory garden. You can see it in the wonderful, wonderful exhibit about the role the State of Israel played with the Jews of Fort Worth, which is still a little bit under construction, but coming along. And Hollis is giving you permission to look tonight if you like. On your way out, preview of coming attractions. We see it in your commitment to this building and your commitment to your family and your commitment over the years to each other. And so what better time than Kabbalat Shabbat, when Jews pause after a week and say, I appreciate you so much, and maybe I didn't tell you 24/7, but now I tell you. And so it is in that service of union that you reaffirm your love for one another. So I thank you for picking Beth-El to do it. And I know there are a lot of faces here and at home watching who are saying, yes, thank you for all you've done for this congregation. You come to this chapel in a different place. You come here as grandparents, not just as parents. You come here with a lot of wisdom about marriage and what it takes to make marriage work. I don't know if any of that advice will be offered afterward, but they are here as a testament to 55 years of love and devotion. And so before we turn to Lecha Dodi, which when the time comes, you will find on page 138. We'll get there in a couple minutes. But before we do, we ask the congregation to rise and we face the Ark. Just take a moment in front of us. You have given so much to this congregation, and we know you're going to give so much more. But this is really about you and your commitment to each other and the path you have taken and will take. And so it's wonderful to stand before the Ark, because I told the kid last week we sort of had the three bears here with no disrespect meant to the Torah scrolls, the story of our people. We have the small scroll that isn't even on parchment that we often give it to our children who want to hold a Torah scroll when they're young. We have the Torah we use far more often because it's a newer Torah and it's in very good shape, and it was actually just cleaned up by a scribe, so it looks beautiful inside. And then we have the scroll that we read far less often, which is the Holocaust scroll, with the cover that says it's a tree of life. And we know that Judaism has been a tree of life, and the Torah has been a tree of life over the years. And so as you take your place, acknowledging everything you've done, and maybe it's even rushing through your brain now. That's a cue if it isn't. Some of the different memories and some of the different moments, raising children and raising a life and being together through the successes and the moments where you took a deep breath and you said it was a success, but it didn't feel like that when we were going through it. But now we know that it is. With all of that, I would suggest that in a sense, we have the past, present, and the future. Because of all those exhibits you put through, even though they're the past as an entryway to the future. And we see that with these scrolls. We see that with the story of our people's past. We see the scroll that our young people read from. And we see with the scroll that we give to the kids so we don't worry about them dropping it. And we see all of that together on this journey. And so just taking a moment of appreciation for you and all you have done and all we know you're going to, even as you enjoy retirement. We know there's always something more. And with gratitude for your families and everything you've done as you have helped to raise them. the moments they took your advice, the moments they didn't take your advice, but it's all here. It's all part of the patchwork, the quilt. And so we ask God's blessing upon you with joy. And you don't get to see it. That's a rabbi's prerogative. But there's a lot of joy and pride behind you, if your backs had eyes, to see the people just smiling as I look at them. And so we ask God's blessing upon you. And actually, we're going to do it this way, because really these are the fringes. These are the fringes of Jewish life. And these are the fringes that hold you tight together. At this moment, this sacred moment of connection, this moment of bringing together, we offer these words you may have heard at your wedding, your words your kids or grandkids may hear at a bar or bat mitzvah, and these words we offer to you now. Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasein lecha shalom. Bruce and Hollis, may God wrap you like this talit and protect you and bring you strength. And may you continue to feel the love around you of your community and of your children and of your grandchildren. And may you feel the blessings of peace and strength always and all the days to come. And it's with great joy that we say Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will, before we let you escape, we will join in Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, but know that you're going to rise in a few moments. We turn to page 138, and the conclusion to this part of the service is Lecha Dodi. We'll join in the first, second, fifth, and ninth verses. And when we get to the ninth, it is a custom in many communities to stand and face the back of the sanctuary, the west direction of the setting sun, to welcome Shabbat symbolically into our midst. If you're a mystic, you would say it's facing Shabbat like a groom and bride face each other. If that's too mystical, we're facing the setting sun and our neighbors. Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat. Turn to page 144.
Yitkadav Yitkadash Shnei Rabba Be'am Hadivrach Herutei V'yamlich Mahutei B'chayecho U'yom Echad U'hayedecho Beit Yisrael
For the Baruch Hu and remain standing through Shema. 146. Together on page 148. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are our creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night, distinguishing one from the other. On bright star over your name, ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on King. Baruch atah Adonai tune we know from Cayden.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated as we turn to the next page for V'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shimontam levanecha v'divartam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'aderech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leod al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'yisharecha l'man tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kadoshim Eloheihem Ani Adonai Eloheihem Asher hoseti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'ol lahem Elohim Ani Adonai Eloheihem.
Page 157, together in English. Standing on the hard shores of history, we still believe what we were taught, forever we stood side by side, that wherever we go is eternal Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There is no way to get there, except by joining hands and marching together.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kavod
turn to page 160. Together, a prayer for this week to come. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up to our freedom. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us through your counsel. Remain us to be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming, to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkah shalom aleinu, yalkol amon Yisrael,
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת בדורתם ובגדולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת בדורתם ובגדולם.
pages. Feel free in Hebrew or in English, standing or seated, or just looking into the garden to take some time for some silent Shabbat prayers.
Shalom Bimroma, Uyase Shalom Aleinu, Beth-El Yisrael, Beth-El Yoshvei Tevel, V'imru.
Prayers for peace can help people to heal when they feel broken. So can doctors, of course. So can music, of course. There's lots of different types of healing. And so can prayer. And even if prayer doesn't fix a broken hip, it can give us the strength to face the challenges, the rehabilitation ahead. And so we offer prayer every Shabbat. We offer for those who are on the road to healing and those who may find a bumpier path, but still could use our prayers. And so on this Shabbat, we mention the names of Sharna Blumber, Charlotte Fios, Allison Getz, Christopher Long, Judy Cohen, Robert Klein, Idalis Rivera, Anita Kabuti, Karen Delavan, Jeannie Rosenblum, William Westerman, Ann Westerman, Lisa Bond, Barbara Leffer, Karen Silverberg, Karen Kaplan, Susie Kornblit, Max Simonik, Harry Labovitz, Carol Ruth Brooksow Alcock, Susan Flappin, Susan Slatkin, Peter Levy, Judy B. Greenman, Benjamin Rosser, and if you have another name you'd like to add, you can do it as I look through the sanctuary. For all of them, we offer our prayers for healing.
Carol Koon.
Page 371, if you wish to follow that and need the words.
Mikor habracha
Shabbat, which asks for healing, we pray, which is still possible. To the Elena, which speaks of a more mystical, universal healing, a time when people around the planet see one another as brother and sister, when the brokenness of nations becomes whole. The Elena can be found on 586, and we rise together. Only to rise in a moment, but we pause to think of those who have passed, those who came before us and guided our lives and brought us strength and offered a path and lessons and teachings and a way to live and love. For some, the lessons were obvious in how they spoke to one another and how they lived. And in others, there were challenging moments, but still we took those. There we go. Sorry. For others, their lives may have been less than perfect, whose is. And yet we learned from their resiliency. We learned from the love they have. We learned from their successes and from their mistakes. We remember all of them when we turn to Kaddish. And first we remember and mark on this Shabbat those who are mourning loved ones in the 30-day period of mourning known as Shloshim. And we mention Edith Yentis, Hannah Friedman Rabinowitz, Freda Eisenberg, David Felder, Sandra Fried, who was laid to rest this morning in Austin. And we add other names and invite you, if you're here observing a yahrzeit, to rise as you hear them. As we mention James Jim Bresser, Marcus Crystal, Marianne Einzig Fried, Jay Fried, Sophia J. Fried, Brad Gaber, Mayor Gabbard, David Gaines, Belle Goldblum, Stella Mayer Goldsmith, Sadie Gross, William Haas, Frederick W. Hall, Erica Hoxter, Harry Hoffman, Isaac Kleinman, Dr. Alan H. Klein, Irving Klotzman, Florence Lakin, Esther Krana Myron, Irving Napoleon, William Roddy, Ruth S. Rosen, Ann Bell Rosenthal, Marion Rubinson, Walter C. Sanders, Jacob H. Schloss, Frank Schumer, Milton Meyer Wheel, Ida Zev. If we have any guests who are observing this week a yahrzeit, you can mention their name. And we rise to offer strength to all those in mourning as we turn to page 598 and as we join together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi. Bialma divrach yirute v'yamlich malchute. V'chayi chon v'yomei chon. Chayi d'chol beit Yisrael. Bagala v'zman kuri v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach leola u'lomeil maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar tramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yita shmei d'kudshat barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Dami ram bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemai. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrama. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Zichronam levracha. May their memories be for blessing, as we remember them always. Amen. Please be seated. In a few moments, we'll turn to Kiddush and Motzi, but not yet. But stay for that so we can welcome Shabbat with sweetness and bread. We have a very special gift tonight. It is the gift that keeps giving. Kurt Thompson found Mamir 26 years ago here, and he makes his residence Australia. I say that just in case you don't fully the seriousness of like this gift he gives to us into the city of Fort Worth, this wonderful, wonderful festival that takes place. And if you're not familiar with Mamir, there are lots of brochures, and he will be available after the service to talk to you about this incredible opportunity that comes every year that is in Fort Worth in the next week. But for other reasons, of which we are very grateful to him and to Jane Cohen, we have this gift of some of his music, some of this presentation, every year just around this Shabbat. And so we are very, very appreciative. And I was going to invite Jane to speak a little about the relationship, and I was going to speak, and then she said, Kurt knows just what he wants to say, and he does it beautifully. And so Kurt Thompson and Michael Schneider, who will be his accompanist tonight and are going to bring the joy of Shabbat on this Shabbat, when in fact our Torah portion speaks about the passing of Miriam and Aaron. And we know that Miriam sang at the sea. We know that when Miriam passes away, the water dries up and the Jews have to pray to get water again. And so on this Shabbat that makes us aware of all the ways through water, through song, through prayer, we come to know God on Shabbat. We have this opportunity to have music, which is the water of Shabbat.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Zimmerman. Thank you to all of you. Wow, I'm not that short. My voice does not project. It gets fairly tired this time of year, so thank you. This is actually very helpful. Greetings, everyone. One of these years, I need to start the start date for the festival to the Friday night before, because for me, this really is when I know that it's finally here. Tomorrow, we have 8 kids coming from Australia, another 7 from all over the place on Sunday, and the faculty start to turn up. So this is the moment where we can't turn back. And I'd like to thank Gail Granick is putting up in her lovely home a couple of our artists, and there's so many people behind this annual event that I'm privileged to be able to be a part of. Michael, thank you for joining me. I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been many. The music can speak for itself largely. There is a bit of a theme tonight to the pieces. I know you'd think it all takes place in 1853, within really just a few weeks of each other. These first 2 pieces they're all revolving around the violinist Joseph Joachim, who was really one of the giants, if not the giant of the 20th century in Germany and in Europe, as a violinist, as a pedagogue, as a composer, and many pieces were written for him by composers you know. In fact, at the opening and closing night, we'll be performing works by Brahms, and you may or may not know that Brahms and Joachim were best friends, and in fact, they co-wrote the violin concerto. These are 2 of 3 romances written by Clara Schumann for Joachim. They were premiered by Robert Schumann and Joachim. but I think you'll get a sense of what a formidable composer she was, and she was also regarded as one of the best, if not the best, pianist of her generation. Can I just set it? That might be safer with the just so beautiful. She's written some other chamber music you should get to hear if you haven't. So 1853, Brahms and Joachim were best friends. Brahms was about 4 years younger and had not quite gotten his start yet before Joachim wrote letters of introduction for him to take to Liszt and to Robert and Clara Schumann. I don't know if he made it to Liszt, but I know that he made it to the Schumanns in October of 1853, the same year that these pieces were written. And in the young Brahms played his music for the Schumanns and stayed with them and basically was sort of hoping for a break, and he got one. Robert Schumann saw in Brahms the great hope. If you may not know this, and if you don't worry about it, but Wagner, who we all know, and Schumann were, we could say, bitter enemies, at least literary enemies. They were very, very critical of each other. Wagner, who said, "I am the heir to Beethoven," which you never should say something like that about yourself. It's okay if someone says it about you, but don't say it about yourself. And then he was very critical of Schumann and his circle for writing sonatas and quartets, and that's yesterday, Wagner would say. So Joachim's motto was "Frei aber einsam," which means free but alone. And I thought, well, that's a very catchy motto. What I didn't realize is that it was actually in response to Wagner, who in his Gesamtkunstwerk, I think it was, said, "Alone you can't be free." So Joachim actually took a jab at him. And on meeting Brahms in October of 1853, Schumann said, "Aha, let's write a piece for Joachim." So they had a friend named Albert Dietrich, wrote the first movement. Brahms wrote the third movement, and Schumann wrote the second and fourth, all in the course of 4 weeks in 1853. And when Joachim came off tour, he performed it for them. And they played a game to see if he could figure out who wrote which one. And it was very easy. It was very, very easy for him. But one thing you'll appreciate with this, F-A-E. So those are the pitches F-A-E. And the piece we're about to play, the Schumann movement, those are the first 3 notes. It doesn't stop there. In fact, maybe I'll just play that one for you before we talk about the Brahms, who does something even a little bit more disguised, but it's also related to the FAE thing. Others in that circle were Felix Mendelssohn, who had passed earlier. He didn't live very long. One of the Schumann's children was named Felix Schumann, and he was the godson of Johannes Brahms. So, I mean, you get a sense of how truly, truly close these people were, and the tight-knit community that they had, and that you have, and that the festival has. And it's just really a pleasure to experience that. And I think the music that we play, many of which the pieces we're playing this summer will include Schumann and Brahms and some of these other, Mendelssohn. So, we're bringing to life some of these friendships, which is really a privilege to be able to do. So this is the slow movement of the FAE Sonata, and this one was written by Robert Schumann. selection. The festival opening night's the 5th. We'd love to see you there. We have some 5th, 7th, 9th at the Kimball, 11th and 14th, and we have the matinee at the Kimball, 2 o'clock. Nice, cool part of the afternoon. No, actually, it's supposed to be a little bit cooler, but and one thing you can count on is cooler temperatures in PepsiCo Recital Hall at TCU, where you should really bring a shawl because it's freezing. But the student groups are very impressive too, including a trio. We've recently established a relationship with the Fish-Off National Chamber Music Competition, which together with Banff they're probably the top 2 in North America. And we have the silver medalists from last year, this piano trio, who'll be playing the Mendelssohn C minor piano trio, which is just that's a monument of. So I'm really looking forward just to sitting there and listening to that. But we hope you'll join us. It's an exciting week. It's a packed week. You can look at the website if you want to see any more detail. Okay, that's enough about that. The last piece, Brahms, Sonatensatz. So he did a better job hiding his, we are playing some Haydn. He did a better job hiding the FAE. So this is E. There's your A. Only he puts it in a different key. A little bit harder to find, but it's there. And another perhaps more obvious statement of his, because remember, they were in a fight with Wagner over Beethoven, who'd been gone for a while. So we all know this little tune. Well, Brahms starts. So he's actually referencing from the start and throughout this entire Sonatensatz, the Beethoven Fifth Symphony. This is the 3rd movement, the Scherzo from the FAE Sonata, all written, as I said, over a 4-week period in October of 1853. Everything you heard tonight was from 1853. Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you. Although we've had our sort of kiddish time before, please feel free to stay, to come over to say hello to our guests, Kurt and Michael, and to thank them. And of course, to find out more, there is information from Amir if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, and if you'll be with us. We're going to conclude with Kiddush and Motzi. I imagine many of you, like me, have not had your Shabbat dinner yet. You're on your way there, so we can get Kiddush and Motzi together. I want to thank John. I also want to thank, look at that, amazing, you're ready to go. I want to thank Cayden and Chloe for holding the juice and helping with the services and everything else. And we will continue. A reminder, if you are visiting and we haven't had yet a chance to say hello, please stick around. I'm here, John's here, President's here. Carl, who streams many of our services, but not tonight, is here. And we'd all love to say hello and welcome you to Beth-El. So we turn to page 123 for the blessing over wine. And do we have any youngsters who would like to get a cup of grape juice? See, there we go. Come on up. Here's the juice. Yeah, great. Yeah, no, don't blow the candles out. We're going to let them go. It's all good. We're going to let them run. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei beriat hafen. Baruch Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yishmor mitzvotav, v'ratzah and the blessing over bread, we join together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Boo.